As Canada heads into an election, we still have an unabated foreign interference problem, and Carney's kind of at the center of it. Let's dig in.
People will charge me as being elitist or, a globalist, to use that term, which is, that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need.
On Sunday, de facto Prime Minister Mark Carney, Canada's new Liberal leader elected by a small group of Liberal Party faithful in a questionably interfered in vote cast, called a snap election for April the 28th.
That's why I'm asking for a strong, positive mandate from my fellow Canadians. I've just requested that the Governor-General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th.
That's 7 months ahead of schedule, and with our federal government officially dissolved, I guess we're off to the races amid a trade war with our closest allies and trade partners, the United States, as the Bank of Canada governor predicts economic crisis by summer.
The Canadian economy managed a soft landing. Unfortunately, we're not going to be on the tarmac for very long. We now face a new economic crisis. Since President Trump began threatening to impose a wide range of tariffs on Canadian exports, uncertainty has increased sharply. And depending on the extent and duration of tariffs, the economic impact could be severe. The uncertainty is already causing harm.
So here's the thing. Even before then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament and resigned from his role on January the 6th this year, Canadians still wanted an early election, sick of the chaos, division, and outright wreckage that the Liberals have dumped on us for nearly a decade. And who has been whispering in the ear of the former Prime Minister all throughout it? Well, none other than Mark Carney. For years, he has served as Trudeau's economic advisor, wielding significant influence behind the scenes. Carney's extensive connections to China and the World Economic Forum raise serious concerns about his role in shaping Canada's policies. As investigative journalist Sam Cooper reveals in his book, Willful Blindness, there's a web of foreign interference by Chinese Communist Party agents, from corrupt political dealings and organized crime to the deliberate undermining of Canadian democracy, all facilitated by a network of powerful elites through international money laundering. Cooper shared some of this research and his insights on the Northern Perspective in a podcast called Beijing Has Mark Carney Hooked a few days ago. Look at this.
Mark Carney, everyone knows, a central banker in 2 countries, Goldman Sachs alum, a civil servant and plutocrat of the highest order in the world, really. And, so I did a story looking at his links to both the World Economic Foundation, which, as you know, there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding this body in Davos with, very wealthy people that travel in and come up with ideas and policy. But I found that it was, reasonable to look at Mr. Carney's connection to that foundation that brings together other wealthy people that have already supported him from outside the country. So without rambling too long, those include one important name, Jin Li-kun. This is the director of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. This is this is an entity in China that has been exposed allegedly as a vehicle of Chinese Communist Party influence. They're involved in development deals around the world, and they're involved with Mr. Carney through their president, Jin Li-kun, who is a former Red Guard and is a Chinese communist operative, according to a Canadian executive that left that body. The point here is that a senior communist figure involved in green deals with Mark Carney that tie into the World Economic Foundation. And, without connecting too many dots, I found that a number of people from Canada are linked to various, NGOs that circle around Mark Carney, have the same sorts of policies. And in a nutshell, why does that matter? Because all of them are interested in deeply investing with China, being involved in net zero global mandates. And Canadians should know, Mark Carney has supposedly ditched the carbon tax for retail, for the average voter. But I think we'd be a little bit naive to believe that he won't be pushing these international net zero deals if elected. And we're going to have an election very soon.
The discussion further dives into sketchy investments under Mark Carney's former $900 billion investment fund, Brookfield Corp., which has partnered with Chinese state-linked real estate and energy companies, covert swap deals between the Bank of England under Carney's leadership and the Bank of China, along with the various intertwinings of tycoons linked to the Chinese Communist Party. And yet, here we are, just 54 days after the Hague Commission dropped its final report on foreign interference, after the pesky little underreported issue where China meddled in our 2019 and 2021 elections, with nothing being done about this ongoing threat to our democratic due process. No accountability, no concrete action, and the same political elites who have turned a blind eye to the problem continue to hold reins of power. The Hague report was supposed to serve as a roadmap to protect the 2025 vote, and it wrapped up in January with pretty clear recommendations. As broken down by journalist Bob Mackin, this includes the Foreign Interference Transparency and Accountability Act, which mandated the creation of the Foreign Influence Transparency Registry that received royal assent in June of 2024 last year. It's supposed to make shady foreign dealings with our political process crystal clear. Entities cozying up with foreign powers, well, they'd have to register and spill the beans. It's a great concept, except that Justin Trudeau's government never hired the commissioner to run it. No surprise, no office, no registry, and no accountability. It's like buying a smoke detector and never putting batteries in it. Instead of reopening Parliament to turn any of this into law, Carney has dissolved it and called a snap election, effectively hitting the campaign trail for quite literally the first time in his life. In Mackin's piece, Democracy Watch's Duff Conacher isn't mincing his words. He says, this election could be the most undermined by foreign interference that we have ever seen. Yet, here we are, elections looming, and it's crickets from Ottawa. Remember in 2021 when Liberal MP Payne Barnes met with United Front activists, part of the Chinese Communist Party's United Front Foreign Influence and Propaganda program? In his riding of Svetson Richmond East in British Columbia, activists, again, that have ties to a group pushing Chinese Canadians go to vote. They were waving his signs, and the elections watchdog said it looked coordinated, but weak laws meant there was no changes and no charges. That's the mess that we are still in today. And now we're a month away from an election on April 28th, and the tools to block foreign interference are just gathering dust, while Carney glad hands like nothing's wrong, ignoring Hague's warnings and refusing to disclose his own financial conflicts.
You say you're in talks with the ethics commissioner to set up a conflict of interest screen. Why not just sell your Brookfield shares and get rid of your unexercised options to avoid having to recuse yourself?
A couple of things. Thanks for the question, Steve. I've more than complied with all the rules, and I've more than complied with all the rules in advance, well in advance, months and months in advance of the requirements that were set up.
The fallout of all of this is going to slam us, worsening the housing crisis in not only the lower mainland in British Columbia, but all across Canada, shredding trust nationwide, continuing to wreak havoc on our streets with crime and violence as poverty deepens, leaving our children unsafe with disturbing increases in things like human trafficking and the proliferation of deadly, highly addictive drugs on our streets, still leaving Canadians clueless about which parliamentarians continue to be compromised as they head to the polls because Ottawa's too gutless to name them. This isn't just negligence, it's a betrayal, and Canadians better wake up because they're the ones who will pay. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Mark Carney is very clearly a globalist with 3 different passports. He's the architect of tax hikes, the mastermind behind green energy hustles. He's now gunning for Canada's top job. We're ripping the lid off of his shady ties and meddling at thecarneyfiles.com. Watch the truth and help us out if you can by visiting thecarneyfiles.com, because this guy's not here to serve you. He's here to sell you.